So today I'm going to do something slightly different from usual, and I'm going to do a ligature comparison. Now, something that I'm often asked, and that is, what difference does the ligature actually make? Now, a couple of general comments that I'd like to make before I give a more detailed analysis and a demo of some of the main ligs that we stock. So people are often asking me, how important is the ligature? And first of all, I'd say that in terms of the mouthpiece setup, which is to say the mouthpiece, the reed, and the ligature is actually the least important part of that setup, but that's only because the reed and the mouthpiece are so important in that setup. So the ligature is still important enough that it's going to make a difference that's worth deliberating over by the player to a certain degree. Now, one of the main points I would make is that ligatures can often be a little bit more about psychology rather than the actual audio that the listener detects. But this can be really important because sometimes it can be about the resistance that the setup offers. It can be about giving the player a little bit more confidence in going for, say, altissimo notes or producing bottom notes more cleanly. It can also be about articulating more or less easily, perhaps. And these differences can be very important to the player. So from that point of view, the choice of ligature can be very significant. So I'm now going to play a snippet of music through a selection of ligs, and you can make your own assessment along the way. Now, I'd be interested to know if you can actually detect any differences by the time it comes through to your laptops and computers at home. You might actually find that it's very minimal, but I'm going to tell you what I think at the end of the musical clips that I play and how it feels to me as a player. So, wish me luck. First of all, apologies for repeating the same phrase about 9 or 10 times, but I hope you appreciate I had to do that in order to make a fair comparison. I should also say that the position of the reed is very important. When I moved each ligature off, I made sure that the reed was in exactly the same position as I shifted between ligatures. Now, the first ligature I played was my own personal ligature, which is a Francois Louis Ultimate in silver plate. And I'm going to sort of describe this one as our control ligature, if you like. So when I play all the other ligatures, when I talk about all the other ligatures, I'm going to talk about them in comparison to this one here. And what this ligature gives me from a personal point of view is it helps to really free up the sound of my mouthpiece. My mouthpiece choice here is a 10M fan Merlot, which is officially the darkest mouthpiece in their range. So my thinking is that this will help just add and maximize the vibrations possible from that setup. So that's what I get from the Francois Louis Silver. And then we move on to another Francois Louis ligature, which is the pure brass ligature. Now, I also found this ligature really excellent, and for me it goes back to something I said earlier. It was more something that I felt rather than necessarily that I could hear in the sound. So really nice and solid again. Perhaps you can let me know if you detected any difference, but it's very hard for me to describe how it felt different to the Francois Louis Silver. So now we're going to move on to the Van Doren Optimum ligature. Now, another great ligature. For me, it was a very even response, very smooth, and particularly on quiet articulation, you can feel it really sort of assisting the player, if you like, and perhaps not quite as bright and open a sound as the Francois Louis Silver lig. So now we have the Selmer gold-plated one-screw lig, a very sort of simplistic looking lig, but for me it was a really nice all-round sound, a very close contender personally. Similar to the Optimum, very even and smooth, and perhaps a little bit more centered in sound than the Francois Louis. Now we move on to a sort of different phase of ligatures, and that's all the leather or material ligatures. So first of all, the very simple Rovner dark ligature. Now, for me, it was quite noticeably darker than the Francois Louis, a very pleasant and sort of rounded sound overall. So just a good basic all-rounder of a lig, if you like. And then we move on to the Rovner Versa X. So it's a similar material to the standard Rovner Dark, but it's got these massive plates inside, these metallic plates. And what these do is add a certain amount of power and oomph and projection. And for me, I found that I got a very similar sound to the Rovner Dark, but there was a lot of weight and extra punch in the sound. Now we move on to a BG lig. So a similar idea to Rovner, the material's just slightly thicker. This one has a rubber insert, adding even more sort of kind of bump in the material, if you like. And I found this one sort of particularly dark and a bit more compressed in its sound. Then we move on to another BG lig. Same material, but this one has got these metal corrugated inserts, and this one's called the Super Revelation. So same thing as the previous lig, it's got that sort of darker sort of sound to it, but as you might predict with this metal insert, it had a certain zing and projection to the sound. So our final lig here, the most expensive one that I finished with, was a Silverstein lig, full of some really advanced technology in the production of this one. Now, I found that this, for me, had a nice sort of blend of projection, as well as a degree of kind of warmth and sonority. So for me, it was a very nice all-round lig. Very close contender again to the Francois Louis Silver, which is my own personal choice. But the Francois Louis Silver just works out for me because I'm really trying to push the sound out a little bit more in the context of my mouthpiece setup. So there you go. You've heard the differences as I've described them. It's probably going to be a close-run thing in terms of the way it comes across to you, but certainly from the player's perspective, this is how I interpret it. So I look forward to hearing what your thoughts are on the various different ligatures.